We're ready. You want to rearrange the agenda or anything?
Yeah, we got four. We got. Bring the meeting to order, 6:16. And Errol, you ready to do a roll call?
Yes. So we're doing roll call. Chairperson Brandon Heavener Dalton,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Lauren Hills,
Here.
Secretary Ariel C. present, Member Don Gosney,
Here.
Member Lynn Johnson, Member Jia Ma.
You're looking around like you actually expect to see me. Yeah, really. Did they just pop up?
Now, when they come in, Ariel, mark down the time they got in.
Yeah. But so we have, four members, present. We have the quorum.
Thank you. If there's no objection, we'll move item N to now in place of item C,
So it's part
or
of
should we,
C,
as part of C,
as part of C,
as
okay.
part of C? Okay, so approval of agenda, so
So now
it's gonna be a part of C, like a, okay,
So you
so,
had no objections for that, so that's
Right.
fine, and now we're adopting the entire agenda as amended.
okay, all right.
There are no objections.
I wanted to pull the minutes for February.
So we're not there yet,
Yeah. 'cause that's
So-
consent, no,
so we're putting
we'll worry
N
about that.
into item C.
Mhm.
So,
First, we do this for the approval of the agenda, and then once we have the agenda approved, then
we'll
go
take
right
item
to
A.
N.
Okay, so if there are no objections, we'll approve the agenda as is.
Mhm.
Okay, so then we'll jump to item N, which is, adoption of Robert's Rules of Order, small board rules. There's attachment that goes along with this.
You're going to move that ahead of even public comment?
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask him. He'd make it, I think since he's still making the decisions,
Yeah.
all right?
Um,
The last page.
so we have a,
Next to the last page.
next to the very last page.
Oh, attachment one.
No. So is there a motion to, approve? Or rather, if there's no objection, we'll approve, attachment one,
I object.
okay? So is there a motion to approve attachment one, Robert's Rules of Order, small board rules?
I, suppose-
We have to actually say it.
Okay, so,
Sorry.
I submit a motion to accept Robert's, rules of order, small rules.
Small.
Attachment, small board rules, attachment one.
like that. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, thank you. Discussion. Lorraine?
Yeah, I like it very much because Robert's rules, it seemed to me it was written by a military person and written for large groups. So there's a lot of archaic things that they ask you to do, like stand up before you want to make a motion, things like that. And also with such a small group, we're really hindering ourselves because in this amendment, the chairperson can make a motion, the chairperson, which cannot be done. The chairperson can vote, which cannot be done under the original rules. And it's less formal, which I think is a good idea. So I'm for it.
Thank you. Don?
Well, I'm against bringing it up and voting on it at this time. Now, first off, our current bylaws actually say that a proposed amendment must be presented to the bylaws subcommittee for their review. The bylaws subcommittee will then bring the proposed amendment back to the CBOC for their discussion and vote. That's example.
Which, just a point of clarification, which version of the bylaws are you referring to?
The one that was on the 15, the one that's on this
15.
website,
Okay,
the one that was in the agenda packet last month.
So we are not, this is still using Robert's Rules of Order. So it's not bylaws change. It's actually called a special rule of order, which are under Robert's Rules of Order. So this is still part of Robert's Rules of Order. That part doesn't change.
But doesn't it change some of the provisions of Robert's rules? Otherwise, you wouldn't need this at all, would you?
yeah,
It does not. There's a citation here, Robert's Rules of Order 4921. It is still a part of Robert's Rules of Order. The idea, whole idea behind Robert's is efficiency. Sometimes with smaller boards, you need a little bit more flexibility, especially when we, in terms of getting a second, in terms of allowing the chair to vote and allowing the chair to take part in discussion. So this is still, this does not come out of any other parliamentary authority. It is Robert's Rules of Order. So it does still follow our bylaws. It's just the adoption of a special rule of order.
All right, also, since I got back on the CBOC, I've been trying to push for a revamp of our bylaws so that we can take control of our own meetings. Okay, following the training that we've received, for instance, I've submitted a number of resolutions to do that. And so then if we're allowed to actually do that, to rewrite our bylaws in such a way, we can address all these concerns and more. That's what we keep just changing the rules as we go along. It's gonna make things a little bit more difficult. I think it's just premature that we need to be able to actually get onto our bylaws to try to make the proper amendments so that we can control our own meetings, we can conduct the business that we're supposed to be conducting, when we're supposed to conduct it.
thank you. Where'd Muriel go?
But probably to the.
John, you want a seat at the table here?
Yeah,
that's
you've
fine,
got
yeah,
chairs
come on
here.
up.
Yeah,
That's
Here.
fine, yeah, that's fine.
come,
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah,
or over here?
You want to-
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, there's the chair right there.
Okay.
Lorraine?
yeah. I was just addressing the idea of waiting until we have a bylaws committee. It's gonna take a while. The people that would be on that committee don't even know about bylaws. We haven't had training on bylaws. We haven't changed the bylaws since 2015.
Actually, we have.
Well, in 2017, did they change it?
Well, we passed a number of resolutions. And I don't remember the exact year, around 17 and 18.
Yeah, around 18. All right, well, now it's 24. That's a long time we have been going without doing it. So I think until we have the bylaws training, I think it does not really make sense to follow the laws all the time. You know, to stop what we're doing now until we've had the training and get 4 people on a committee or 3 people on a committee and have them go through all this. I think that's just, it's like putting the cart before the horse.
Thank you, Lorraine. Ariel, I wanted to make sure, since you left, that if you have any comments on this item.
So
wanna
I'm
share?
wondering if anyone can verify that if we use this, new rules, what differences will we have?
Would you like to answer that?
Absolutely. So the difference is right now using the full Robert's Rules of Order, the chair is not supposed to get involved in discussion. One way or the other. The chair cannot make motions. And that's the biggest difference. And we no longer would need a second for any motion. So if you noticed from the last meeting, we had a couple of motions that died for lack of a second, and because we didn't get a second, we couldn't even discuss any those things that were brought up. If we use those small board rules, we would be able to do that.
Basically, it's like easier, like simplify the
It
process.
lightens up,
It,
if I may.
it,
add,
yeah,
lightens
it
up.
simplifies it a bit, you know, and I think it's really valuable for a small board. Now, I feel like if we, yeah, as we grow, maybe it's important to revisit this. But for now, I feel like this is,
I should have mentioned, I apologize, because this is a special rule of order, it will have to be adopted each term. So at the end of, what is it, the end of June,
okay,
then, yeah, it's only good for the term. Any special orders would expire after that, and we automatically go back to the full version. So, but we can adopt it if the board wants, you can adopt it every year.
okay.
Melissa has her hand up.
Oh,
Yeah, just a quick point of clarification. I believe the CBOC's term is calendar year versus the district is fiscal year because that's when the elections are held and so forth. So
Okay.
this would be a calendar year adoption. So for January of next year is my understanding.
And just to put a finer point on that, the word term is, where is that defined?
So it's,
Because our terms
In-
as members are longer than a year, right? Which,
that is correct.
not to confuse things, but just
That
to clarify.
That is correct, but each term of the CBOC itself is the calendar year.
Okay,
And I'm sorry, I was thinking the academic,
okay.
but yeah.
But
so
in-
this would
is that-
expire in December.
Where is that defined? You know?
It's in one of the versions of the bylaws, which
Okay.
I've had the same difficulty with
No.
finding, I mean, I can see them, but I can't see the.
In the original.
Adopt, yeah, and it's still in the original.
Okay, Don?
Sorry, so that we passed this, we no longer need a second on motions, we no longer need a vote on things. Sorry, you said we don't need to vote.
Yeah, go ahead.
We need a vote, we don't need a second.
Okay.
Just like with Robert's Rules of Order, we're still following those, so if the chair uses if there are no objections, if we're quiet for 3 seconds, well, that is it feels like, oh, we didn't vote, but we actually did vote, that's called consensus at the vote. So yes, you need votes. Perhaps confusion was the chair gets to vote, whereas currently the chair does not vote. The chair is not called a
Unless
roll
there's a
call
tie.
unless there's a tie or to affect the outcome. So now we would, if we had a roll call, if we didn't pass something with no objections, you would be called for a vote.
Any other comments?
So
Area.
it's not common. I started to have runny nose. I'm not sure if it's allergy or not. Maybe I should leave the room and I can join on Zoom and get that.
I'm fine with it, you stay.
Okay, with that, would you staying, or if you feel more comfortable leaving?
I'm not sure if it's allergy or not. I don't want to. Like,
You got an N95 on, I think.
okay,
I feel safe.
okay. Just-
Louis?
Just a point, our auditor has a time limit tonight,
Okay,
person wide, so
okay.
about 25 minutes.
I don't know where.
We can find out, but I just want to make you aware of that.
Okay, what's her curfew? I mean, does she have a hard stop somewhere?
Let's see if he'll respond. We'll chat.
Or a hard start.
Hard start.
We're in the middle of this, we can finish this and then we can move, if there's no objection, we can move to directly.
Michael.
Well, we should do public comment and then you can reserve your comments until.
Okay, so hearing no other comments, we can go to the vote.
Are you gonna ask for public comment?
Go ahead.
We can ask for public comment on this item.
Well, you're required to, aren't you?
Yes, is there any public comment on this item?
I see no hands at this time.
Okay,
I make a motion.
the motion's been made,
Oh,
the
okay.
second is, you
Okay.
seconded,
Okay, yes.
yeah. Oh, you want to make an
Amendment?
amendment?
Yeah.
Okay,
Can we move this to, the next meeting's agenda so that people can do more research and,
If
and,
that's function.
and.
So-
vote?
okay, that's the amendment.
Okay,
or that's not it, it's,
It's
what
not
is
an
it?
amendment, it's emotional on its own, it's
So there's second
it's a
motion on the
privilege
floor.
motion, yeah.
Okay,
So is there a second?
I'll second
take that vote first.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so, there's a second motion on the table, to move this item of, adopting Robert's Rules of Order, Small Board Rules, Attachment 1, to the next regular meeting. All in favor?
Is there a
We can't
discussion
do that. There's no discussion on postpone,
on what?
on postpone, because this is a motion to postpone, so there's not a discussion.
Oh, okay.
We can't use all in favor. We
Okay.
can use, if there are no objections, or we can call a roll call vote. That'd be your call,
Let's do a roll call vote for that.
okay?
Ariel, you wanna do the roll call?
Okay, so, to do a vote,
Yeah, so we're now doing a roll call vote on your motion to postpone this item.
so chairperson, Brandon? No?
We don't
Oh,
call
yeah.
him, because he can't vote at this
Okay,
time.
okay. Then vice chairperson, Lauren Hill?
No,
No. Secretary Ariel? Yes. Don Gaston?
it. Yes.
Dama? No opinion. No opinion. Okay.
So is that a no?
Or
Is it a no, a yes, or abstain?
Abstain.
Abstain.
So, Mr. Chair, we have an interesting thing here. We have two yeses and abstain and a no. You would have, because your vote would affect the outcome, you have the right to vote here. It's because if you vote no, it's a tie, and ties automatically fail. This motion would fail, and we would go back to the original motion to approve.
Okay, I'll vote no,
Okay,
and we'll go back to the original motion. And, I'd like to call a roll call vote for adoption of Robert's Rules of Order, Small Board Rules, Attachment 1. Roll call vote, please. Yeah.
Lauren Hill?
yes,
Ariel? Yes? Dama? Yes, yes. Don?
No.
Okay, thank you. So we've adopted the small board rules. Thank you. If there's no objection, we can move, the audit report, item G, to the top of the list here. Although, sorry, I'd like to open up for public comment before that. So excuse me. So let's go to item, well, I gotta, yeah. So item D, comments from the chairperson. I briefly want to say thank you for those of you that were able to join the joint meeting with the Board of Education. Watched the videos. It seemed like a productive meeting. Thank you, Lorraine, for reading my comments. I am excited about some of the recruitment commitments that were made, how even though they were very ambitious, I personally will follow up with staff to make sure we can do everything we can to get our 7th member and hopefully more members by the end of the year. And that's all I want to say about that. Item E, public comment. So members of the public invited to speak on non-agendized items. Ellen, do we have anybody?
I do not see any people or hands.
So there's nobody online right now.
No,
Okay.
well, not beyond the auditors and the members.
Okay, but no, sorry,
No attendees.
board members? Nobody. Okay. Okay, so public comment, item F, public comment on agendized items. Hearing that there's no public,
None at this time.
we'll move on. So we're at item G. bond financial audit, and bond performance audit presentation.
And we have Michael Ash with us to present the bond building fund.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Michael Ash, partner with Christie White Associates, here to present a draft of the bond financial audit report. And I'll just tell you when to scroll through. I'm just going to go through it pretty quickly, and then I'll answer any questions that you might have. So if you just want to scroll down.
Sorry, I was trying to get your camera up, so just a second. We'll
Yeah, no
scroll back.
problem. Would it be easier for me to share, or is it easier for you to do it here?
Either way.
Oh, it's okay. You can do it. That's fine.
Okay.
So this is just a table of contents right here. Moving on to the next page, please. And then this is just some information about the measures. This has been in here for years, talking about measure D, measure E, and then measure R. And this is the governing board as of June 30th, 2023, and the CBOC as of June 30th, 2023. Just more information here. Okay, and then we get into the fun stuff. So the things that are ours on this report are the opinions and then the findings. The financial statements themselves are the districts, are the bonds. So this is an independent auditor's opinion. It changed. Gosh, I want to say it was either last year or the year before. What they did was they moved the opinion up to the top. It used to be buried down in the auditor's report, and they decided that they wanted it to be front and center, and the most important thing. And if you're only going to read the first paragraph, you'd see what that opinion is. So this opinion is unmodified. This means that in our opinion, the financial statements as they are presented right now are fairly stated in all material respects. So that's the best audit opinion that you can possibly have. And then there's just more information, and this is all very standard language, just talking about, kind of what we did to come up with that opinion. Emphasis of a matter is just saying, if you keep scrolling down, that this is only on the bond measures and not on the district's financial statements as a whole. Then there's some standard language on the responsibilities of management, some standard language on the auditor's responsibilities. And then if you keep going, we do have one schedule that's supplementary information, which I'll get into when I get there. And then also an internal control over financial reporting. That report is required for all Proposition 39 bond financial audits. And that's towards the back of the report. And I'll get to that when we get there. So, okay, the financial section. So this looks very similar. If you've been on the CBOC before, not much has changed. And usually with a bond, it's pretty simple what you have. You have cash and investments. You have a little bit of AR sometimes for interest receivable, maybe some other AR in there, and then you have accrued liability, so accounts payable that you have to your construction vendors. So pretty simple. And then fund balance for anything bond fund is restricted. So that's your fund balance. So that's your balance sheet right there as of June 30th, 2023. And then if you scroll down to the next page, you just have your income statement. So again, pretty standard. Your expenditures are all going to be facilities acquisition and construction. You'll have some interest income because of the money that's in the cash and county treasury. And then increase, decrease in fair value. This is a newer thing the last couple of years, and I'll get into that when I get to the cash footnote. If you scroll down, now you get into the notes of the financial statement. So this is just more support for the items that are on the financial statements. And this really hasn't changed much over the years. So if you keep scrolling down, I'm going to take you to the cash footnote. If you go up a little bit, yeah, right there. The only thing that you'll see, and this is in the last couple years, so the majority of the money is held in the Contra Costa County treasurer, and school districts are not required to report that at fair value. It's recorded at amortized cost. But GAAP, governmental or generally accepted accounting principles, requires you to record that at fair value. So for years and years, those two numbers were so close together that there was never an adjustment necessary. And then in the past couple years, that fair value number has gotten down to about 97, 98% of the amortized cost. So there have been material audit adjustments in fair value, which last year, 2022, the district did not record, and we recorded an audit adjustment for that. In 2023, the district actually made the adjustment themselves. So I just wanted to touch on that really quickly. Moving down, there's not much else here. There's a little bit, that's just more description on the cash and where it's held, that type of thing. If you go to note 3, I think that is just a little bit on AR, and there's not much in a bond fund. AP, it's all construction. Scrolling down to note 5, that's just a standard litigation paragraph. There's nothing specific that we are necessarily aware of that we thought we had to disclose. Right above that, there's construction commitments. So construction commitments are if the district has entered into contracts with vendors for things and those expenditures are not yet accrued. Those are what's called a construction commitment, and those are disclosed. Those aren't in the financial statements themselves. This note 6 is something that the CBOC had wanted in here that we've had in here for years. So the district within Fund 21 not only has Measure D, E, and R, but then there's also some other building fund money. This is state school facilities money and some other things that the district has put into Fund 21, but that's not related to the bond measures. And the district tracks those in a separate resource, so those don't get commingled with the measures. If you keep going down to the next page, and then this is just a little bit of showing what those other building funds are that's not in the bond measure itself. Then if you go, this is the supplementary information. So this schedule is not required for bond audits. It is for the district audit itself, but the CBOC had asked for us to put it in here years ago, and so we continued. And you'll see that we did have one audit adjustment, which I'll get into because it's also reported as an audit finding. We did have one audit adjustment related to double counted accounts payable for Measures D, primarily in Measure E, a little bit in Measure D. So that's what the difference is right there between the unaudited actuals that were in the SACS file versus these financial statements. And so if you scroll down to the next page, this is a government auditing standards report. If you scroll down to the next page, so all Proposition 39 bond audits, all district audits themselves too, have to be done under what's called government auditing standards. And what government auditing standards says is that as an auditor, you don't give an opinion on internal controls over financial reporting. Public entities like publicly traded companies, they do get those, but the GASB, the cost benefit analysis, they've determined that it's not worth it to give an opinion because that would require a lot more work. But what you do have to do is, as an auditor, is you design your tests to look at internal controls over financial reporting. And if you do come across anything that's deemed to be a material weakness or a significant deficiency, it gets reported in what's called an audit finding. And if you scroll down, you'll see that there is one reference here to finding, I think it's on the next page, to 2023-001 that we consider to be a significant deficiency. There's also compliance and other matters. So if there was any non-compliance that was material that had to be reported, that would be shown in that section. We didn't have any non-compliance material to the financial statements. So if you keep going now, you'll get into, I believe, the audit finding. And I just want to touch on it. We haven't had a financial audit finding related to the building fund in a while. We have had several on the district audit, but not for the bond funds. But we did have one for financial reporting, and it's due to all of the turnover at the district on the financial side, not the facility side, more the financial side. So the district lost a lot of people in key positions, CBO, director, that type of thing. And so there was a check that was actually cut twice to 2 different vendors. And the one check that was cut to the incorrect vendor did not get voided in time. And the district might have more information of exactly the why. But it resulted in an accounts payable being double counted. And so we proposed an audit adjustment for that, and the district agreed with it. So that was the one audit finding that we had related to financial reporting. And so with that audit finding, the district has to come up with a corrective action plan. And so you can see the delay, unforeseen staffing transitions during closing, The current team has been trained, timeliness. So the check was voided. It was just voided too late after the books were already closed, and so it resulted in that audit adjustment. And then you'll see we didn't have any prior audit findings. So that's it for the financial audit. Again, it's, there's not too complicated. A bond financial audit, there aren't, usually the transactions are pretty standard. The one transaction that you didn't have this year is a new bond issuance, and that would be something that we look at too. In 23, 24, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you might have had one, but in 22, 23, you didn't. So are there any questions that I can help answer?
Thank you, Michael. The first question I have is just, I don't know if it's intentional to not put your company's name on this document, or is that some standard practice with drafts or something?
Yeah, with a draft, we won't. So when the final report comes on, you'll see the letterhead pages. So that'll be, if you scroll up, the first page of both opinions will have our letterhead on it, the independent auditor's opinion, and then the internal control report. So when you get the final report, and the cover page will have our kind of logo and letterhead on there. And then the two audit opinions, the first pages will have our letterhead with our firm name, contact information, all that. So yes, it's only because it's a draft.
Okay. Is there any way in the future, is there any possibility of identifying who's doing the audit on this document? I feel like it's a big omission for our board, or our committee and the public, even though the public hasn't seen this yet, I guess.
Okay, well, when you do see the final report, our name will be on there for sure, 100%.
Okay.
It's just, with a draft, there will also be signatures on there too. So it's just been our standard practice when we send drafts, we don't put the letterheads on there. We wouldn't put the signatures on there because, we're not signing off until it's final. So this report is not final yet. There can still be changes to it. So the signatures wouldn't be on there, but if you really wanted the letterheads to be on the draft, we could put them on there for you.
Or just a single line saying, who did it. And then, yeah, okay. So just want to welcome Lynn. Thanks for being here. Don.
Just so you're aware, you're not the first person to bring that up. Many, many, many times over the past couple of decades, we brought up there, why can't we see the name of who did this? And just so you're aware also, we very rarely ever see the final of these audits. We see the draft. We'd have to go to the school board meeting and pull it off of their agenda packet to see the final. So
Okay.
we just don't see them on the CBOC hardly at all.
Is that something we can make sure we do? Or is there a reason why that doesn't happen? Okay, so we can get that, okay. All right.
Yeah, I concur. There is a code, and I brought this up last year. Ed code 12410.6. And it says that lead audit partner or coordinating audit partner cannot do an audit for more than 6 consecutive fiscal years. Now, we've been dealing with Christie for 9 years. Last year at our audit, you answered the question Anton asked you about how many years you've been doing it. You said at that time 5, and this would be your 6th one. Were they consecutive years?
Yes, this is the last year. So I cannot be involved at all in the 23-24 audit. So we have 6 audit partners in our firm, and Christy White was the audit partner the first 3 years of those 9. And then this is my 6th year. And so if we are retained by the district for the 23-24 audit, I am unable to be part of the bond audit or the overall district audit. That is correct.
And that's why it would be nice to get this information so that we can make sure, if you would just include in your packet that, now we get the final report. I thought that was the same one that the district got. But I've never seen anybody's name, even in the cover letter, somewhere where we can tabulate who did it in what year would be really helpful.
Yeah, we can add that if you do get the final report, I can put a cover letter in there that has that information for you. Not a problem at all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other comments? Lori?
Yeah. On page 21 in our agenda and 1 on your report, you're just talking about general rules that you follow. In the second paragraph down, it states that you follow Ed codes 15264 through 15288. And on page 4, which is ours 24, underneath the bulleted parts there, you have the paragraph, we are required to communicate with those charged with governance regarding, among other matters, the planned scope and timing of the staff, significant audit findings, and certain internal control related matters that we identified during the audit. Your audit is late again this year. There is an ed code within that span that talks about it. We should have the report, not the draft, the report by March 31st. It's ed code 15286. And this is the second year that's happened. I understand that you do the financial report for the whole district, and then you do ours. So that would make, behind, it would depend when you started the other one. But next year, could you get with the district either, so it's on time? Now, the problems we hear from the district is they don't have the personnel. So you should incorporate that in the timing of when you're going to start the audit, to give them enough time, or even you could say, these are the reports we'd like you to pull. Tell them this in May or something, while you're doing the other audit. They can be pulling those and getting those ready for you, so that when they're done the total audit for the district, they would have this material, they'd have a head start on what you need. But we've got to get these in on time.
I 100% agree with you. And we're still not, unfortunately, done with the district audit for 22-23. And we started back last March, starting with requesting items. So we try as hard as we can. So but we have to do the work, and if we don't have the information to do the work, we can't finish the audit. So we do all those things. Those are great suggestions, and we do all those. We give plenty of advance notice. We have audit weeks scheduled, and the reason they gave you is the same reason that they gave us, that just turn over, and we just don't have the people to do it. So again, I apologize for it. I don't like it being late either. But I want you to know that we've done everything that we can possibly do to get it done. So.
Well, it would make me think that in this audit, you should mention that last year's was not on time. And then it's up to the district. If they need to hire more people or whatever they have to do, if it's their fault that it's not getting in, the law doesn't say whose fault it has to be. They don't say you do your best. It says it's got to be in by March 31st. So maybe you can write it up in this audit saying it's late again. They have to address that problem. And if it's on their side, let them deal with it. But I don't see it in the report that it's late at all.
Yeah, we typically don't put that in there. Unfortunately, there's no, for the district audit, they can get extensions. So the district has an approved extension for the district audit from Contra Costa COE until April 30th. Unfortunately, the way they wrote the ed code for the bond audits, there's not that same flexibility. I don't know why. The bond audits also don't go to the state controller. They don't go to the CDE like the district audit does. They don't go to the county office of education. So that may be why that there's no, place for that or that type of thing. But so the district itself, it's technically not late because they have an approved extension. So It is late for federal audit clearinghouse purposes, but it's not late for the state purposes. But I don't disagree with you on that.
Thank you.
Don,
Since that was brought up, are there any penalties for a late audit? I mean, is somebody going to go to federal prison or, at least get your wrist slapped? Or is it just one of those finger wagging things saying,
As far as I know, there are no penalties for, district. That's, and that's a great point. We've had that. We wish that because when the audit is delinquent, the district audits, it shows up on the auditor's side. And it's, at least from my experience in the 12 years I've been doing it, it's never the auditor's fault. Every once in a while there might be one, but usually it's because we don't have the information to finish the report, and that's why it's late. So.
thank you.
It's unfortunate. Thank you. It's a great point.
so Lorraine, I want to thank you for your comment. I think it's a really good one. And I think somewhere we should be reflecting this challenge because we're talking about the performance of the bond program and we have a bond audit, bond program performance audit. And yet it's that information is missing. So we have to figure out some way to reflect that in this document, I feel like is important.
Yeah, because nobody looks at this stuff. Nobody looks at our annual report. Nobody looks to see it. No one government agency ever checks on this. So that's why I wanted to get documentation. We can put it in our annual report, but who reads the annual report? We need the documentation to show that the laws are not being filed. So if we go to court, we've got something to show.
Don?
I agree with that completely. It'd be great if we included it in this report or the performance audit of the bond program. It'd be great if it was in the annual report. But as you said, people don't read these things. But at the very least, it should be included in our minutes that we registered once again, that we have a late audit. And that's one of the reasons I don't like action minutes. We just say, Ms. Humes commented, not what she commented. Because it needs to be important. When people look back on it, our minutes, you see, okay, we see year after year after year, we're commenting on the fact we've had a late audit. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, do you have anything? Not to put you on the spot. Area?
So CBOC is going to have our own report, right? We can put that in our own
Correct.
report.
Yes, yes. And we did last year too.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, any other question? Yes? Oh. We have a
Make
member
a
of the
public
public.
comment. I didn't sign the sheet under the Brown Act. I'm not required to, but if you really want me to, I will.
You're good.
My name is Jack Weir. I'm the director of the County Taxpayers Association. I serve on 3 bond oversight committees currently in the county. And I'm co-founder of the California Association of Bond Oversight Committees, so I feel like I know quite a bit about Prop 39 bond oversight. And I'm not an attorney and I don't give legal advice, but the situation as I see it is that in many important respects, the district is not in compliance with Prop 39's requirements. And I made a similar statement at a previous bond oversight committee meeting. And I want you all to be aware that the state law provides that any resident of the district who feels the district is not in compliance with state law can go to the Superior Court and file an urgent request for an injunction to constrain the district from continuing to do whatever it's doing that's not in compliance with Prop 39. And I don't say that as a threat, but since there may be members of the public listening to this meeting, it's important that people understand there are things that members of the public can do to insist that the district comply with state law as it applies to Prop 39 bond oversight. So that's the comment I want to make.
Thank you, Jack. Lorraine?
I have another question. I'm not a numbers person. You know, I'm not, I don't know about finance and stuff. So there are a lot of charts here and all. In our annual report, it seems to me what are the main things you want to say? Obviously, there's no, problems. You haven't found any problems. But when we look at the charts, like on page 26, you're page 5. It seems like the purpose of this is so that you can see that the assets up top, that's the money we've got, investments and all, that number, the 166,100,000, et cetera, is equal to the liabilities and the fund. Is that a key item on this?
Yeah, so a balance sheet, the assets always have to equal liabilities plus fund balances.
And we see that does it, so that's good.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So the fund balance ends up just being what's left over. So if you take the assets minus the liabilities, so the assets are what you have, the liabilities are what you owe, and then the difference is just the fund balance. And so it should always balance, hopefully.
Are there any other basic signposts that we can find in here to tell the public that are good things? Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think pointing out the audit finding, because that's pretty big, because we haven't had one before, at least in the years that I've been doing it on the financial audit side. So I think really stressing that, I think is, and we're seeing the same thing on the district side with that, with the turnover. So I do think that is really important to have a finding. They're pretty rare. It's been my experience that findings are pretty rare in bond audits from what I've seen and what I've audited. So for there to be an audit finding, it's a pretty big deal. So
Also, I wanted to point out on page 33, you're page 12, where you have note 6, reconciliation of building fund balance, that I noticed the for D, E, and R, the final ending fund balance is 160 million. You see that there, 619,000. Now, if you look at that previous chart we had, it's down the bottom there. Ending balance. So those things match, and to me, that seemed important.
yes, yeah, that should match. So that should definitely match. And then when you see the overall district report, the building fund will match the totals that are on the right. That's the whole district audit, the whole district building fund.
Right. And if we wanted to look on page on 33 again, if we wanted to, you see up there under B, it's construction commitments. And these are the remaining construction commitments. Now these, we made the commitment, we haven't paid the bills, they haven't given us an invoice for it yet. But if we want a true picture, if we look at the, for our 3 measures, D, E, and R, if we look at the bottom, that 160 million, if we add this to it, it's not part of your audit, but if we would add that to it, that would tell us how much money we had to play with for the next year, right?
Yeah. So, and again, remember that this is as of a point in time. So this is as of June 30th, 2023. You had the 160 and you've got 26 million more committed. So yes, at that moment in time, there's still 134 million not committed to anything.
Great. And then on page 36, R14. You got that up there? Okay. I can't see it on my cataract. On there, you just have D and E mentioned. You don't have R mentioned. Why isn't R on there?
Because there were no adjustments in R. I mean, I could put a sentence in there saying there was no adjustment in R if you would like that.
It's just, you're just worried about adjustments here.
Yeah. So R, the annual financial budget and report balance and the audited financial statement balance were the same.
Mhm.
Because there was the audit adjustment that was made didn't affect R at all.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're very welcome. Those are all really good questions.
So Michael, just going back to a point we've already talked about, which is, the, staffing levels that inhibit timely, communication of certain data sets. That is, it's something that, I mean, does it strike you as odd not to have that outlined in the audit? In the performance audit?
Well, this isn't the performance audit.
What's that?
This is the financial audit.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm talking performance. Yeah.
Alright.
I mean,
I'm not sure. I don't necessarily think if we were doing the performance audit and ours is probably not as detailed as what your other firm is doing, necessarily, but I don't know that we would put the staffing levels in there, only with findings and as the reason for there being findings, because you can have a district that has poor staffing levels and they can still get everything completed timely and not have any findings. So, I know what you're saying though. I mean, I understand. It's not necessarily an audit finding that you didn't get the information. As long as you get it, you didn't get it timely. But I understand the frustrations that you're having. I really do. Maybe somewhere in the cover letter, we can allude to that. I'll have to think about that when we finalize the report.
okay, thank you.
In
You're
our
welcome.
reports, maybe we could, and in our questions that we submit, we
Yeah.
can put this in.
Yeah.
That would give us a notation. That's what we did last year, and then they told us why they didn't do it.
Listen.
I wanted to just share quickly, and echo what, Michael Asha said. They have been asking and they have been incredibly patient. They can't do their work without the information and they're very diligent in asking for it. We don't want it to be late either, but here we are. Some of the next steps, and maybe if I could uplift this as a recommendation. This is the draft report coming before the CBOC, as part of the commitments of the board policy. The report will become final and the final report goes to the board in a board meeting. And at that board meeting, pursuant to the statute, the board has to receive that final draft report. And so at that meeting, Mr. Ash will be present at that meeting, Mr. Edelman will be at that meeting, and they're gonna present the final report to the board. And one of the things the board always says is, what are the concerns of the CBOC? In fact, they will not receive a final report without hearing from the CBOC about the concerns. And so while he's exploring the option of including it in the cover letter, I think it's something that really has to be highlighted and emphasized at the board meeting, because again, we agree, we want it to be on time. We want the draft to come to you in early March so that it can be reviewed, so that the final report can hit March 31st. We made commitments last year that we would do better this year. And this year, if I'm being honest, I think we did a little bit worse. And I think it's absolutely true that losing staff in key positions has been a major factor in it. But the ability to fix those things lies with, right, the board and the staff. And so I want to uplift that because I want you to know that this is something we all want to fix, and the way to fix it is together. And so I just kind of wanted to share those next steps in the process, just for those that might not be aware of what's going to happen next. And I think at that board meeting, it's a good opportunity to highlight the concerns to the board. As staff, it's not something that we will hide, right? We talked about it last week. We will bring that forward in the précis and in the introduction that we do at the board meeting. But, I encourage everyone, to bring their voice to the item.
So what I'm saying, we know you do the best job, and last time you said, we'll do better. If you don't have enough people to do it, you can't, you're gonna burn out, you're not gonna be able to do it. But that's why I wanted it in the audit. It's a broken law, it's against the law. If they put it in the audit, then the board has to address it. If we just write it in our report to them, they don't have to do anything, but by law, they have to address the points. That's why I'd like to see it in the audit.
Yeah, Melissa, I appreciate your suggestion. I think it's a good one, and I think we should do both, right? I mean, we should voice the issues. We should put them in our own reports, but it should be reflected, I feel like, in the formal assessment. And it's something that is seems very, I mean, so I think, Michael, you had mentioned there's an issue between the two laws, the school board or the ed code, and in terms of requiring, so Prop 39, maybe you can help me, Prop 39 requiring the audit to be submitted by March 31st. And you had mentioned the board, this state board of education, or who was the entity that was?
So, yeah, so I think the district audits themselves, like the whole district audit, is due December 15th, but there can be approved extensions. So if the county office of education approves the extension, which they have done twice now, right now it's April 30th. So as long as that district report gets done by April 30th, it's not late. But within Prop 39, it's the March 31st date. There's no leeway, there's no extensions. And this bond report doesn't go anywhere. So it doesn't go to the county office. It doesn't go to the state controller's office. It doesn't go to the CDE.
Okay,
The district report goes everywhere. So, yeah.
Aren't you required to do this independent audit by Prop 39?
It's by the education codes that support Prop 39.
Right. So.
Yes, and we do. I mean, we do. And yeah, I mean, it is late. I mean, yeah, there's no, by Prop 39, this audit is late, and we all agree with that.
Yeah.
So I think the board letter, the cover letter that we have is a really good place to identify that. That just goes through, it's addressed to the board. It goes through, if we have any disagreement with management, that type of thing, other matters. And I think that's a really nice place to put it. It's on our letterhead, just explaining the situation. So.
Okay.
Can I just share one more thing?
Yeah.
I only mean it to be like informational. So the district-wide audit, is that December 15th? Is that right? Or is it December 31st?
December 15th, correct.
So the bond audit, so the district-wide audit does the full financial audit for all of the funds. The bond fund is one of those funds. And so I think by kind of like original design and intent, if the district-wide financial audit is completed in December 15th, then there's some additional tests that may follow, but this is kind of a subset of the district-wide audit, right? So for bond, because of Prop 39, there is a mandate that there's an annual bond performance and bond financial audit. But the bond financial audit is the detail for Fund 21, which is also included in the district-wide financial audit. So I think part of the original design was if the district-wide audit is due and done December 15th, then that leaves plenty of time for that March 31st deadline for the other one. Now, there isn't a district-wide performance audit. We'll hear from our performance auditor next. And the performance audit, it's a different scope, right? The financial audit has one responsibility and the performance audit has a different responsibility. But for the financial audit, this bond financial audit, it's in a lot of ways attached to the district-wide financial audit. You can't really separate it because this is a component of the overall district-wide audit. And so I think that's part of the the conflict that he was describing is some of those additional requirements of a district-wide financial audit and further submittals that going to other places is because it includes the bond write-up, right? If there's something happening in bond, that'll be in the district-wide financial audit as well. And so the conflict in the statute is that if the district-wide financial audit has these approved extensions, that could have an impact, right? And maybe I'm not saying it well, but I kind of just wanted to share that just as an informational piece. Because they're definitely connected. You can't separate them. But the bond financial audit does come forward to this body. It is separate in that nature. But it's also a major component of the district-wide financial audit. And so I think that's some of the conflict. And of course, the staff that are supporting the district-wide financial audit are also supporting, right, the district-wide financial audit. And so it is related in terms of, you know, kind of the effects. And again, I don't mean any of that to sound defensive or to give an excuse. We have to do better. We made that promise last year and we didn't get there. So we got to figure out how we get there next year. But I just wanted to share, hopefully that's helpful, just a little bit more information about how they're connected.
I do appreciate it. I don't know if I followed everything, but I think if we had a one-page description of this challenge, I think it's important that we don't, I mean, the law's the law, it's not gonna change, but our expectations can change if we know that this deadline's impossible to meet or close to it. And I think it also would just help us plan, you know, as we think about how we move through our work to know that, to not get the hopes up for March 31st. Not to say that it's super consequential, but just to be, you know, let's understand what we're dealing with here and not, you know, set unreasonable expectations.
Is there any chance for the, you know, it says a deadline. Well, you can get it in before the deadline. So if you move your front end forward, is it possible to move the front end of the district-wide audit, start it before you have been doing?
So generally speaking, and this is kind of just an internal deadline that we set for ourselves, because we want to bring the draft audit to this body before it's final, as required by board policy, which is greater than what the law requires. So in the ed code, it says that this report shall be delivered to the board and the CBOC at the same time and no later than March 31st. So that's the law requirement, that the final report be delivered to the board and CBOC at the same time and before March 31st. There was a chance we could have met that law requirement this year, but if we did that, a draft never would have come to the CBOC. It would have been kind of what happened last year, which was that we said we have to make March 31st. So it's March 29th. We don't have time for a draft. So we're gonna make it final to hit this March 31st, but then it's a draft. And once it's final, as he was stating, it's been signed, it's been finalized by the auditors, there's no change. And so this year we said, okay, well, we're right down to the wire, which is not where we should have been, right? We should have been ahead of the wire, but we were right down to the wire. So there were kind of two choices. Make it final to try to hit March 31st, or speak with the auditors about keeping it a draft so that we could meet the commitment of it being a draft that was thoroughly reviewed, had a chance for a revision, had a chance for conversation before it was made final. So to best answer your question about how we plan ahead, our deadline for our audits really has to be the end of February. And that's a little bit hard as the district, just to be honest, because there's a week in February that we're off. So when I say it's due the end of February, like we knew by Groundhog Day, we needed to be done, which just happened to be February 2nd this year. So that was our internal deadline. February 2nd was our day. I thought it was kind of funny. It was Groundhog Day because the audits come every year. So, we need to be done in February because for Brown Act, in order to present a draft to this committee, for you to have the time to do a review, for us to invite the auditors to come to the meeting, to do the presentation of the draft, to give them time to receive those questions, answer those questions, make the report final, and it be final before March 31st. They have to be coming to the CBOC at the latest, the beginning of March, which means our report has to be done in February. So yes, we just, that's what we have to do. That is our schedule. We have a board policy and we have statute. And so to have a final report by March 31st, we have to have a final draft report the end of February. And in order to do that, the auditor needs to have everything from us basically at Christmas time, because it is an extensive amount of work that they do. And then they do their work and then they have questions and they might need additional documentation. And, we have to give them the time to do their work. And so to best answer your question, I think in planning forward, we can work better with the auditors to help them understand when we would like to have that draft report available to provide to the CBOC and work back from there. We can't work back from March 31st, right? We should really be working backwards from like March 1st, because that's when we want to have a draft that we can bring to all of you so that our final report is a collective final report and it's not happening outside of this body. And so I think that's what I'm hearing, and that's kind of how I think we implement it. And while that was something we talked about internally here with staff, we did not communicate that effectively with the auditors. The auditors have been patient and thoughtful in all of this. And so I think kind of, because I've been here making notes of different things we need to do different next year. I think when we sit down to begin the audit work for the next fiscal year with them, we need to let them know that, because it's kind of a different deadline. And maybe then we will get to the place where we will hit the mark.
I maybe not been clear. I was talking about, you are dependent on the total district audit, financial audit.
There's definitely.
I'm talking about moving the total district financial audit, starting that sooner. So it gives you some breathing time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I can
Okay.
answer that too. Yeah, we started as soon as we can. And I want to say that the issue is not just West Contra Costa. I don't want it to single this district out, because ever since COVID, so before COVID with district audits, we would never had extensions. Like they were less than 5 a year, and they had to be for extraordinary measures. Like, the district didn't have a CBO, or, there was a mass, like a fire or something at the district. It had to be an extraordinary event for anyone to get an audit extension. So all of our reports were pretty much done December 15th. All the bond reports then, of course, were done by March 31st. Since COVID, the first year they extended the deadline to March 31st, then they brought it to January 31st, then back to December 15th. But we're seeing, I think last year we had 75 audit extensions. I mean, it's a perpetual issue statewide, and there's been a lot of turnover everywhere. It's not just West Contra Costa. There's been turnover, and the state, I understand why they were initially approving a lot of extension requests because of COVID, and there were a lot of issues and, more important things to deal with, but now as we're coming out of that, I would hope that it would get back to, we don't like this schedule because we feel like we never get a break, because we're still wrapping up our 22-23 audits where, in the past, we need to be rolling on 23-24, right? We should have had 22-23 already done. So it makes it really challenging on us, and we don't like it. We would much rather have everything be done December 15th, all the bond audits be done March 31st. But it's just been, kind of a statewide issue the last few years since COVID happened, unfortunately. But no, we start that district audit as early as we possibly can, trust me. But one thing is when the audit before it goes late, then you can't really start the next audit until the prior audit is done. You might be able to do a few things, but there's a lot that you can't do until you have the prior audit done. So that automatically sets you back. So you're already behind. So we're constantly trying to get requests. We think we started as early as possible. So, yeah, again, like Melissa said, just everybody just has to try to do better.
Okay, so I'd like to move on to the performance audit. Mr. Ash, thank you so much for your hard work and for the presentation. We all appreciate it. Thanks.
You're very welcome. Thank you for your questions and have a great evening.
Thanks.
Good evening. We have Mr. Adelman joining us tonight for the bond performance.
All right. Hi, everyone. Hope you saved a few good questions for me. I have let me see, do you mind if I share my screen? Can I put up my presentation?
Absolutely. Let me stop sharing.
Yeah, it says the host has disabled.
Just give me a second and I will
Yeah,
get that.
no worries. Well, while you do that, good evening, everyone. My name is Nathan Edelman. I'm with this firm called Ide Bailey, and I think as you well know, there we go. So yeah, we have completed the performance audit of the bond funds for the year ended June 30, 2023. So all the good stuff about the financial audit. The purpose of the performance audit is to take those audited accounting records, take those transactions, and then audit them for something else, which we'll get into in a second through my slides. And I'll note too, the performance report that you have, excuse me, the performance report is also a draft report. Audit's pretty much complete, and so once we go through this process, and there's some reviews from the district side that we would want to complete and some administrative things to wrap up. But meaningfully speaking, the audit's done, and nothing that's going to happen between now and the final report will change the results of the audit that we'll talk about in a second. So some of this may have come through from the prior presentation as well, but really with any audit, our responsibility as auditors, be it if it was the financial statements or in this case on the performance audit, our responsibility is to ask questions and then report back to you folks, report back to the board through our audit report, the results of those questions. So we ask questions, look at documents, look at select samples, but take kind of these abstract accounting records and turn them into tangible things and kind of move them through the audit process. But the district, the folks, in this case, it's the folks who run the bond program, but they are really the ones that get all of the credit when there's a good audit, and they're also responsible for implementing corrective action to the extent that they're There we go. Okay, hope you can hear me. It says I was muted for a second. So management is responsible for implementing corrective action, and they're also the ones responsible for compliance, for ensuring that, in this case, ensuring that the bond funds are used for their intended purpose. So we have completed the performance audit, and I want to just lay out the objectives and the scope of the performance audit. And these things are established by the state. The state publishes it's a guide for school districts or for school district auditors. It's updated annually, and it includes lots of state compliance about there's instructional minutes and attendance, but there's also a section about these Proposition 39 bond audits. And this is what the state tells the auditor to look at. This is kind of this is the expected scope of work. And really, I've kind of just pasted some of the stuff onto the slide, but really what they're saying is take those audited accounting transactions from those bond funds and then make sure that they're spent on construction projects, specifically construction projects that line up with the bond project listing for each one of the bonds. And that's renovation, furnishing, equipping of facilities, but things that Proposition 39 say are allowable to be charged to these bond funds. And then to the extent that there are employees, to the extent that there's salary transactions charged to the bond funds, we are asked to ensure that that's consistent with this Attorney General opinion, from a few years ago about how that works. There are some additional things that we've done, which we have outlined in the report within the body of the report. And that does focus on ensuring that projects have gone through the competitive bidding process and kind of a few other items beyond what was required by the state. Oh, actually, those are the things I have here. But it's looking at payment processing, salaries, procurement, change order approvals, really making sure that those other things, so it's not just that the expenditures were correct, but that they also were subject to public bidding. Change orders have to go through a process, and we did pick a sample of those to make sure that that process had been satisfied. And actually with that, I want to just kind of my best attempt to create a visual over the scope of, if I can move this out of the way. I don't think you see that on your screen, but my best attempt to create a visual about just how much of the expenditures did we look at? How much of it did we touch as part of our audit? And you can see the dollar amount sampled for each of the bond measures over the total expenditures for the year. And these are based on, because it's the performance audit, these are based on the original, I guess we'll say the unaudited numbers that were provided. So there are some additions, or I guess I should say some deletions, just to line that up for changes from accounts payable. Excuse me, changes to accounts payable that resulted in the financial audit. The actual sampled, the actual dollar amount sampled is unaffected by that. So there's a 32%, 18%, and 15% of the dollar amount of transactions, of expenditure transactions, were subjected to those audit procedures. And then in addition to that, separate from that, there were 13 contracts and purchase orders that were selected, and those are the things. Go back one, just to go back. There we go. And those are the things that I was referring to on this slide about looking at payment processing, making sure that the approvals are there, change orders and public bidding. So 13 contracts for that. And really the executive overview, and again, there's a lot more details within the body of the report, but the high level 10,000-foot conclusions from all of this is that bond funds were properly accounted for, and they were used for authorized bond projects, which means that the samples that we selected, the projects that were charged to those bond funds, were compatible, were allowable with the project listing, allowable for Proposition 39. And then salaries, there are salaries that were charged to the bond program, and those were all for things that have, we'll call that a direct nexus to the bond program, but they're consistent with that Attorney General opinion. And I don't think I don't have the slide about the contracts, about the public bidding portions that we looked at, but there were no audit findings that resulted from that, or really from any of it, which is similar to your financial audit. I guess I'd call that it's a clean performance audit. And excuse me. And so with that, let me stop screen sharing, get this. There we go. And so with that, I will take a drink of water, and that concludes my presentation, and I'll turn over to the group and try to answer any questions as best I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edelman. So similar to the financial audit, the performance audit, it doesn't have your name on it either, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, it really the exact same answer. When the report's in a draft form, it hasn't gone through 100% of the process. And so once the report's been issued, it just it has a signature, it gets officially dated, and there will be firm letterhead on the report as well.
So if you don't mind, the next time it would be appreciated so that we know who it's coming from. Any comments? Don?
Thank you very much. You know, for those that have not been around all that long, my comments tonight are going to sound like a broken record. That is, the same comments will be heard time and time again, mostly because they need to be heard. They need to be heard by the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, the media, by the public, and by any board members that care to listen. The comments need to be made for the record. A couple of years back, I reported about the legality of using bond funds for audits. I went on record for 16 months in a row before someone determined that what I had been saying was correct. As the childhood fable used to say, someone needs to tell the emperor he's not wearing any clothes. Tonight, that's me, again. Performance audit is supposed to actually audit the performance of the bond program, and that includes how the bond funds are administered. A couple of years back, senior district staff was able to convince the board that they could save a boatload of cash if they downsized the scope of this audit. And since several of the board members at the time really didn't appreciate the annoyance of having the public looking over their collective shoulders, they were anxious to downscope this audit. Keep in mind that this is an audit overseeing how the board and staff is handling $2.4 billion of the taxpayers' money, and the district staff are the only ones providing information to the auditors. Does anyone see a conflict of interest here? If it's not the information that they're providing, it's the information they were never asked about. I'm not suggesting in the least that the staff is doing anything wrong, but there is a lot about the bond program that is being kept from the CBOC, the board, and the public. The auditors are no longer allowed to speak with or listen to anything coming from the oversight body assigned by Prop 39 to protect the public. These are the people that can show them which corner of the rug to pull up to see things they need to see to properly do their jobs. I said, had they actually spoken to members of the CBOC, as they used to do every year, they used to have lots of interviews, they might notice how over the years, the board and staff have treated the CBOC and specific members as bastard stepchildren, how they've been ignored, how district vendors and board members have publicly abused and mistreated members of the CBOC when they disagree with what they say, how the CBOC has been misled and even lied to, and even how the application process has been manipulated in such a way that it appears to many that the board and staff were and are trying to keep specific applicants from even being considered. They might ask more questions about why financial reports have been absent, why public outreach is anything but real outreach, why the budgeted expenditure of nearly $500 million has been something less than transparent, how the facilities master plan had been manipulated for political purposes, and how the update of the facilities master plan had been manipulated to suit specific agendas. They would have heard when board members went on record stating that the CBOC works for the board and how they will never accept a board policy that includes language that codifies the independence of the state mandated oversight body. Think what a performance audit might look like had the auditors been allowed access to the very people who could point out areas deserving review. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Mr. Edelman, in your professional opinion, can bond dollars be used for the performance and financial audits? Or let's just say performance audit in your case.
Okay, so I guess can funds be used for anything? I guess I'd say that's a legal question for the attorneys. I have seen in other instances the bond funds are charged to the bond audit. But I've never seen a response from a legal. I've never seen a response from legal counsel addressing that specifically.
Sorry, our legal team, Nixon Peabody, agreed with me on that
Okay.
in writing.
Okay. Okay. But I guess part of your scope is to look at what, the bond program is spending on and whether that has been outlined in the ballot language. Does the audit language, is the performance audit, is it listed on the ballot language? And does that matter to you as an auditor?
Oh, so I have seen in certain ballots, yes, the audit is listed specifically on the ballot language. I wouldn't be able to remember about West Contra Costa specifically without pulling it up. But to the extent, does it matter? The audit literally looks at, construction projects. These are $1 million projects and some pretty large invoices that run through it. And to the extent that the audit is or is not something that should be on there, really it wouldn't get picked up just because of the the size of the audit contract in relation to these construction projects.
Can I
Yeah,
provide a point of clarification? So, we have sought, and we call it bond counsel. So there are attorneys that specialize in evaluating if bond dollars can be spent on something. And there's actually 2 tests that are performed. So one of the tests is it an allowable expense pursuant to the bond measure language and any supplemental, like Attorney General's opinion or any other guidance that's available. The second evaluation that's made from bond counsel is based on tax law. So because this is debt, there's a series of different rules that apply to the funds that we use in the bond program. So there's actually 2 tests that are completed. And so we did work with bond counsel, and they did both evaluations. And so here at the district, the bond performance and the annual bond performance and bond financial audit are not paid with bond measured dollars. So none of the dollars come from Measure D, E, or R. We do, however, use dollars from Fund 21, but that's our non-bond resource. And so those are dollars from pooled interest earnings or state grant funds. And we did work with bond counsel to get that confirmed. And so in regards to, I think, specifically your question, both the Bailey and Christie White audits are not being paid for with bond measure funds. Different types of audits have different types of rules. And so there are other audits where we also then look for the guidance to see what funding source can pay for that audit. So just to kind of take it a little bit further, one step further, there's the supplemental audit that we talked a lot about, the forensic accounting investigation. And we had bond counsel again do the 2-part evaluation. And there was actually a percent allocation of how much needed to come from which funding source to pay for it. So in the scope of both Christie White and Bailey's review, their audits wouldn't be part of the review because they're not being paid for with bond measure dollars.
thank you. Any other comments on the performance audit?
Yes, I have a couple.
Yep.
I noticed on, your first page, our page 7, in the, second paragraph where you're talking about, guidance, you mentioned Appendix A. And I wanted to thank you for that. I know, Anton had made that statement last year. And I noticed you picked up on that, and so did the financial audit. I just want to thank you for putting that in there. Another thing on, this is a minor, page 3, or page 9. You also talk about ed codes. And you mentioned your span is 15278 through 15282. I believe it should be 15288 because Ed Code 15286, which says it's got to be in by March 31st, is not in that span. So I think it's supposed to go to 88 instead of 82. It's just,
Okay, should I write these down? Yeah. Okay.
on your page 4, or page 10, talks about methodology. And these are the things that you pull out to look at. And what I'd like to see us do is from our financial reports, do some performance auditing, looking at some of these things. But we don't know, we get now a checklist, we can get change orders, and that's about it. we could get the ledger, but I don't know what to ask from the ledger. Do you have any guidance, like when you look at a change order, what are you looking at? What are you looking for?
Oh, yeah, so I will say, we do get a lot of information and we have some benefit that we see something similar here. We go to your peers and see the same thing and you kind of replicate it. If I were to just look at one, if I were to say, give me the accounting records, I mean, it would be very hard for me to be able to figure out what it means and to make sense of it. Because we would then also have to go to staff. I mean, Melissa answers a lot of our questions and gives us a lot of support for the audit. And the audit's a collaborative effort. And so if any district just gave us information and then came back, a month later and said, okay, where's the audit report? It's going to be a failure because we have to, we ask questions, there's follow-up questions. So it is a process. And so with that, you asked, well, what do you look at for change orders? And that's an example. We'd say we want to be able to see when, and there's lots of things that someone could look at for change orders. The specific things that we're looking at in this audit is just to ensure that the change orders went through the approval process. So there's going to be usually, and forgive me, I don't know the exact transaction flow for West Contra Costa, but there's a number of folks that need to review and say, yes, this change order is accepted by the district. And then usually, ultimately, they go up to a board approval process. And so what we want to see through the process, what we want to see in the audit is that all of the required approvals were obtained before the district proceeded with some kind of work on that change order.
Mhm. Another thing is, I believe I read in this that you don't look at the checklist. You look at the ledger or whatever. We get checklists. What we have in our report today, I don't know if you have the agenda? Do you have our meeting agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. In the agenda, if you go to page 62.
Yeah, 62.
This is what we get. We get it the month after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, what would you suggest we pull from here? We can pull any documents we want. But what are we looking for when we look at this each month?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the purpose of what the CBOC is looking at is probably a little different than what the auditors are looking at. I think if I was sitting in your position, if I was sitting in your shoes, I would want to know that, the items that are listed on here, these are the things that are being paid out for the month of March, I guess it is. I would want to know that, okay, those are allowable for the bond program. And certainly you could ask. I don't want to speak on behalf of the folks that would be have to provide the information, but I imagine there's a way to ask. The way that we do the audit, though, we would, the checklist listing of checks, you could, I guess, over the long term, over the life of the bond, yeah, that would line up with the expenditures that are subject to audit. Really, the difference is just timing differences about accounts payable and accrual accounting versus cash accounting. But at the end of the day, the stuff that we're getting it's very similar. It's a listing of transactions.
So your suggestion is the main thing is to make sure it's in the wording of the bond measure in the project list.
Yeah, so I mean, if I was in your position, I'd probably have some familiarity about what's going on. I would just look at this and say, okay, Swinnerton expenditures. If you understand if you understand the projects that are going on, you could probably have a good sense just analytically by looking at this. Okay, does it make sense? If maybe at some point something stands out, just you don't know why it's there, I'm sure someone can provide an explanation.
Okay.
Could I share? I just, we would be happy to, if you guys wanted us to present, we bring kind of the same financial reports, and I think there's a familiarity with that. But we would be happy as staff to do like a presentation on the change order, and then we could show you when Eide Bailey goes through, right? All of the expenditures, any dollar spent on the bond, then they're pulling, they ask us, send us the full ledger, and we send it. Then they say, okay, here's the samples we're looking for, here's the items, right? And some of them are contracts, and some of them are change orders, and some of them are invoices. There's like, and some of them, they're asking for our timesheets and the payroll information, right? They're evaluating those different areas. And then for each item they pull, I mean, for one of the items, I might send them 20 different supporting documents to provide all of the backup for that one contract. And so I think it would be too much to do all of the areas at the same time. But based on what the committee would like to see, you know me, I'd love to come and tell you, like, for a change order, here's all the supporting documentation we provide. Here's what it demonstrates. Because part of our role as staff, we're like internally auditing everything that we're doing constantly, right? And so when the auditor says, show me that you have done everything you said you were gonna do, which is outlined in the PMP, got a bunch of backup documents that support that single line item. And so I'd be happy to bring forward to you, here's everything that supports the change order. Here's everything that supports the procurement for construction versus non-construction, because it's different. So if that's a desire for the committee to see, I could even present the AP checklist differently at future meetings where I could talk about what each line, what services they're doing for that project. If that would be helpful, we're happy to present that in a way where those connections are more evident as we do our work together all year. And so I just want to offer that. If that's something you guys would like to see, we'd be happy to bring it.
Yeah, we can talk about that, but that sounds interesting. Now back to the audit on your page 5, our page 11. Again, it's a methodology. How you doing, Ellen? Switching back and forth.
I'm here, I'm with you.
All right, you had mentioned this before, the number 4 here, and it talks about how much the transactions that you did, and the last sentence there talks about the percentages. And it says, like in measure D, you did 32% transactions. The total amount spent on measure D of those 32%, for all the transactions, not only the 32, was $7.4 million. E, you only did 18% of the transactions, yet the total was $18 million. And R, you did 58% of the actions for transactions, and the total was only 5.7. Why did you do so few for E?
Yeah, good question. One, I think there may be a revision to the actual percentages, because as you noted in the financial report, there were some changes with accounts payable. The dollar amount's not going to change. The percentages, or I should say, the percentage of the total transactions that are selected is almost a representation of where that bond program is in its life. And so, for example, we see typically at the end of the life of some of those bond programs, maybe there's only 5 transactions, and yeah, we're at 90%. In an instance where those bond programs have hundreds or maybe even thousands of transactions, and there's quite a bit of large construction projects, then typically you have more dollars that are audited, but the percentage of the total just becomes smaller. Kind of the way that the sampling works.
Okay. Number 6, you talk about the payroll expenditures, accounting records. You selected 4 out of 12 employees. And the last statement there is the individuals tested were full-time district employees with bond-related responsibilities. Were these full-time district employees that worked full-time on the bond program?
Oh, are they full network?
So-
All four? Yeah,
Answer that.
Yeah.
So we actually don't have any district employees that are billing 100% to the bond program, because that's also kind of the nature of a project. So if we have a very large project, like for example, when Pinol's new campus was being built, we had a district staff member that was charged 100% to Pinol because that was a full-time job. The only project he worked on was Pinol. But, and that's potentially in the future, right? When we look at like Kennedy and Richmond, that's a possibility. But we do timesheets because we are all split funded. So the work that all of us do in support of the CBOC, that is paid for with general funds. So none of us would ever be charged 100% to the bond program if we're doing duties outside of the bond program.
Yeah.
And so that's why we do the timesheet. And so we're paid our salary based on our FTE allocation, which is split funded. And then subsequent to that, we do our timesheet, which shows exactly how we spent our time. So hourly employees, it's an hourly. Management employees, it's a percent time because we're not paid hourly. And so then there's a reconciliation that was done. And so what they did was they looked at the employees that do work on the bond program, but we have 0 employees that are being charged to the bond full-time. It's all split funded. And then for those employees, they requested the payroll records, the timesheet records, and it was for multiple months for each employee. So they didn't just pick like 1 month out of the 12-month period. I want to say it was 3 or 4 months that they looked at for those employees. So part of the test was to look to see, was that consistently applied across the entire audit period? And so because he does, you know, tons and tons of audits, right? He might not remember all of our details, but I wanted to just share that with you. And so at this time, we don't have anyone charged full-time to the bond. We don't have a project to support that allocation.
Okay, good.
that
And
lines up with what we wrote. That's a much better understanding, much better response than I would have had for you. Thank you.
now, number 11 on page 12,
Yeah.
it talks about the CBOC. And you said you reviewed minutes, information presented in the CBOC website, related district policies. Again, we have not met with the laws, and you're supposed to check to make sure that we follow the laws. Last year, again, it was a matter of not having the legal amount of members. This year, again, we do not have the legal amount of members. And last year it was, what else was it? We didn't do a, annual report. Now, it's like, when I think of you, I think of when I have put a roof on my house, I have to get a permit, and that person comes and they inspect the permit. I think of you as the people on the permit, so if you're gonna say we don't do something, that's fine. And I'm saying, so that we can then work with the district if we're having trouble or whatever to get that fixed. So I don't mind you saying we didn't have an annual report. But I would think that that should be in the report. And.
Yeah, and there are, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and there are a number of things required by Proposition 39, things that are required of the CBOC as well. And those things are not within the scope of what we're looking at here. The scope is what's laid out by the state, and the report is responsive to that scope of work.
But in the amendment, it says, and all laws. So,
I don't know what's meant by all. We certainly wouldn't be able to look for, any and all laws that are.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get documentation down on some things.
Yeah.
And finally, I was looking on your page 7, R14. I was just looking over, you've got 2 lists of expenditures. And it's real nice that you have, on page 7 are the expenditures, and up at the top it says Measure D.
Yeah.
The next page is Measure E, and then there's R. And I just noticed that on page 7, under D, you've got some dental plans. And you looked at 4 people. And there were 4 payments paid out for a dental plan. And we're talking like, the first one was on, 5/21/22. It's almost $6,000. And that was paid in July. Then you look down, and the next time you see this California Schools Dental, it's $7,000 paid for September. In October, it's $7,000. And then in August, it's $1.3 thousand. For 4 people, that seems like an awful high expense for dental in 1 year.
Could I answer
Yeah.
that, what the backup showed? So dental, that's what we call like a payroll vendor. So when, as an employee of the district, there are benefits that I'm entitled to, dental, vision, health. And there's a portion that's employee paid, and there's a portion that's employer paid. And so part of the verification that we had to do for the audit, and this was extensive, I give them a lot of credit. It's how I learned all of this. I didn't know about payroll vendors before this year. That wasn't something I had looked into. So there's a couple of things. So the reason why you might see 2 in the same month is because there's actually 2 quote departments that have bond employees. And so one of the department codes, which would be in the long string of account codes, is Lewis and his assistant Sylvia. And they both have a % charged to bond. The second grouping is essentially the other 10 employees. The reason why you see it at particular times is because some payroll vendors are monthly and some payroll vendors are quarterly. That's how the contracts are. That's how the district pays for all of their employees. And so, the other thing that you're seeing here is this is the actual expense. So this isn't the test they did for 4 employees. This is the expense for either all 10 employees or the 2 employees for either, and I forget exactly what it is, I can verify, but I want to say the dental was like a quarterly payment. And so it wasn't a monthly charge. And so those were the dental benefits for 10 employees that were charged just a portion to the bond for a quarter of the year. And so, and so part of what we did was we had to show and provide evidence to the auditor, right? We had to demonstrate our compliance. And so we showed what was the FTE allocation. And then we showed all of the payroll stubs. And then we showed a copy of like the check was paid. And then we made sure that that % outright on the employee, on your check stub, it showed how much your employee was paying towards your plan. And then we said, okay, does that represent that FTE %? And then in the journal reconciliations that happen for the timesheets, benefits are also refunded. So in that reconciliation that's done for everyone, it's not just our salary that is reconciled for the time that we spend on the bond program, it's our salary plus our benefits. And so, we pulled all of those records, and because an FTE allocation can change, we had to do that for all of these different items. And it came down past the penny, I'll tell you that, which was really interesting to me because I got to do some of that work this year for the first time. But that's what that represents. So it's all of the employees, and it's not a monthly charge. It's for most of the payroll vendors. I believe even one of them was like twice a year. It just depends on how that payroll vendor is set up for the entire district.
Yeah, okay, good.
But what was
Makes you-
charged to the bond was only for bond employees. It
Yeah.
matched the FTE allocation and the reconciliation.
So this $5,000 is not just charged to the bond program.
So that $5,000 is charged to the bond program, but for all of the employees, according to their percent
Yeah.
allocation for that employee paid benefit.
Okay. All right.
And then
thank you.
just just my own observations. I don't know the numbers offhand for West Contra Costa, but typically for these school districts, and this is just very typically, the benefits and dental and vision is one thing, but there's retirement, there may be OPEB benefits, there's medical. Those benefits typically add up to around 50% of the salary cost. And so again, I don't know what it was here, but benefits are it's certainly not insignificant in relation to any kind of employee payroll charged to for any school district, really.
Don?
Just to put things in perspective, my union spends in the neighborhood of $39,000 a year for my medical insurance.
Wow,
It's not cheap. And I'm a retiree, so I don't get the full benefits.
yeah.
39,000 a year.
Mhm.
Choke on that one.
And rising.
Yes.
Are you done with your comments?
Yes,
Okay. And then I just have one other comment. It's just the last statement of the audit. That this report is intended solely for the information and use of the district's Board of Education, Management, and the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. And is not intended to be and should not be used by anyone other than these specified parties. Is that really necessary? And is that a requirement, and by who?
Yeah, so that's an audit requirement. And it's not to limit distribution. It's a public record, it's on a public agenda, but it's to limit the parties that would be relying on the audit. Because the audit has a defined purpose and scope, and we're saying that anybody in the world, anybody out there is certainly free to obtain the report, they can read it, but the folks that would be placing reliance on the report are the folks that are, hearing the presentation, that are part of the agreement. And really the expectation is they have the understanding of the scope and the results of the audit.
Okay,
I have one more. So,
thank you, yes.
I just thought of the last one. Last year, the audit's late again, just like with the, last year. I appreciate you had in your cover letter that it was late and that it was because you didn't get the material on time. And I'm hoping you'll put that in again this year. It just gives us documentation.
Okay, I'll take a look at last year and see how we can see what can be done.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Edelman, thank you for the presentation and all your hard work.
Thank you. And thank you to Melissa and everyone who had to put up with the audit. So thank you, everyone.
Definitely a partnership. We appreciate all your work this year. Thank you.
If there are no objections, we'll move to item O, site visit committee, site visit schedule adoption and report out. Okay. So.
Which is on what page of our agenda, please?
My pages aren't numbered.
Or,
Yeah.
No,
Last
the agenda
page.
page.
Yeah,
The agenda
page, the last.
The third page of the actual agenda itself.
It's 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Third page of the actual agenda.
I'm sorry, the agenda.
Well, the three first pages. All right, so you got your cover,
it's
Flip
for a
one,
reference document.
flip 2,
Okay, I mean, sorry,
items LMNO are at the top. There, my page doesn't have a page number.
all right, sorry.
It's up on the screen.
I can't read it, sorry. I'm blind.
So site visits, I think, are critical and important. I'd like to get the first one scheduled. So the proposed site visit, here, if there are no objections, we can move to approve, Hercules Middle School, High School site visit on May 10th, which is, a Friday. In, the mid-morning, to be exact.
Do we have to approve it? I mean, isn't it up to the committee when they want to go on a site visit?
Well, wouldn't it kind of be nice if the people you're inviting, it's convenient for them as well?
If they approve it?
I mean,
So, yeah.
if the committee decides that this is a great idea and the rest of the CBOC say, I can't make that, then are we serving our purpose properly?
Well, does the whole committee go on a site visit or the whole CBOC go on a site visit?
Well, I think that I would think that the entire CBOC should be invited, should be allowed to participate in it. I said, but if it's at a date and time that is not convenient for them, would that make an impact on their ability?
So let's have the comments come through the chair.
Yeah.
And, did I hear any objections to, the, approving the site visit for May 10th?
I like it in the morning.
How do you check in? Sorry. If you've been doing
So the, I think that I think it's important to get these things on the calendar and send 1, 2, 3 members out to bring back an experience and share. And then we can continue to get these things scheduled and hopefully work to find more compatibility with our schedules to figure out how to get more people out there. Ellen?
Just as a point of clarification, at this moment in time, and by the time we make it to May 5th, there will be no sidewalks in place. So we will still be going over dirt and gravel, to be able to access the site. So I just want people to be aware of that's the stage of construction we're in.
Okay. Closed-toed shoes.
Yes, yes, everybody will need their proper PPE.
No shorts.
Discrimination here.
Okay, so I didn't hear objection, so it, stands, passes? Adopted, thank you.
Didn't you object?
Oh,
Yeah.
did you object?
I-
I'm sorry.
No, I just cannot make it, Friday morning. Can we change to another date? How about Friday night? No, I mean, May 9th?
So we, it's gonna become an issue. I know one member can make it on this day, and that's myself. Not to be selfish.
She's the chairman.
If you wanna do May 9th and commit to it and go, sure, I can't make it on May 9th. My intent was just to get one scheduled where I knew, so,
Do you have any other available dates?
I do, and they're outlined on the planning document. So what I would suggest, what I would hope for is that we schedule this one and then schedule any additional one based on anybody else's availability. And we continue to populate these. We weren't able to schedule any site visits last meeting. And so I feel an urgency to get these calendarized, and I don't think there's a limit to site visits. Obviously we can't take up all the staff time, but we haven't done any. And so, this is a date that I'm committed to. And I would love to have anybody else commit to any other dates they can.
If it's on Friday, I can do 9 to 10 in the morning. Would that work for you?
It would work for me. I think, you think an hour is sufficient
For the site.
for this site?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's only one building, so that helps.
So.
It all depends on what they're showing us. Here's the inside, here's the outside. Let's go home.
If I could just make a recommendation.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to open up Lake in June, the first phase of that campus. Hercules is a small site, heavily impacted. Everything they're doing is either overhead interior work right now. Taking a visit during the workday when there's a lot of activity. I would not recommend it on that site. Typically, we would like to go either after hours when the construction crew is down. It's not to say we can't do it, but because we are opening Lake, I might suggest your first visit would be the Lake. That site is really in its final phase of commissioning, if you will. The buildings are basically done at this point. It'd be a much better site to see by the committee as a complete site as we move towards the phase of getting ready to move. So you would see it before the students move. Because if you don't see it in May, next time you see it, it will actually be occupied with furniture coming from the other side. It'll be your only time really to walk through it before it's actually occupied. It just, that's worth it.
Louis, what time of the day your work crews wind up?
I believe they're done by 3:30.
3:30?
Yeah.
Lucky then.
Typically,
So I think it's a great suggestion. I think, one of our main challenges is getting all of our schedules to align. And, I chose Hercules on purpose because it's kind of it's smaller, it's not as consequential as some of our other projects. And I just wanted to get one done. I think we talked about exercising the muscle of site visits, getting some training from folks who have done this before and, you know, what to look for, all that stuff. I think the more that we can start to do these things and talk about it, the more, you know, valuable those training sessions will be, because we'll have started to exercise the muscle. But I mean, I think it would be important for everybody to go to Lake, you know, I think, but I don't want to get stuck into a situation where we can't find a date that works for everybody.
Could I add, just for consideration, one of the other days that was listed as a potential site visit day on the previous agenda was May 24th, which is a Friday. What's also nice about May 24th, coincidentally, it's a district reserve day. So that means there's no school that day, which can create conflict or it can create opportunity, right? And so it's a day that you could do a site visit on the school campus and it wouldn't be occupied. The school district calendar has some reserve days if there's like fire or something like that. And so on May 24th, it's a Friday and it's a work day for us, but there's no school that day. And so that might be another day for the committee's consideration that might provide some good opportunity.
It's also a 4-day holiday.
Yes, it is right before
That's
Memorial Day.
Memorial.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of companies, a lot of unions are shut down for 4 days. Yeah, they negotiate. You have the holiday on the weekend, we take off both Monday and Friday.
Which means I will be stuck with my kids.
Ah,
Can I bring my kids to site visit? Probably no.
I'll
Well,
see what
members
I
of the
can do
public can.
to join on May 10th. My schedule has drastically changed, my work schedule. But I'll see what I can do to move around. For May 10th, May 24th, I'm a chaperone on my son's grad night. So I won't be in town, but I'll see what I can do to move around for May 10th.
Okay, that's great.
join on that.
Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, I think if members want to get out there and do a site visit, please send me the dates that you want to go. And then I can coordinate schedules and hopefully we can get at least 2 members to each site visit. But I think, you know, getting these things going is important. Yes, Don.
I agree 1,000% that I think that they're critically important. And Ariel, you might recall August of last year, you and I were making arrangements for a site visit and there were issues that stopped us from being allowed to make a site visit. But you don't just have a site visit of a school. I mean, going out there to Hercules, going out there to Lake, the work is done to a large extent. We need to be able to see that as they're breaking ground. How am I supposed to look at the foundations when you've already got a building on top of it right now? It just doesn't make any sense. You're missing the point of the site visits, be able to see things as they're being constructed. So you have multiple site visits of each site to do it right. And we're not talking just two often, because some of these projects last a very long time. A high school lasts for 1,000,000 years. Elementary school doesn't take that long. But as Lewis is pointing out, we don't get out to lake pretty quick. I mean, the work is done, with the exception of that mountain of dirt they got on.
Just for clarification, this is phase one. So we do still have phase two, phase three, that needs to be completed, but yes, phase one's almost complete.
No, I agree. We can't have multiple site visits if we don't have the first one. So let's get it going and let's, throw out dates that work for everybody. And again, it may be that we need to do one-off, one-member site visits, but that's still, we're only 6 people. So, that's just, it's not surprising, I think.
I mean, during the day, I'm free just about every day. Just about. I mean, there's always exceptions, of course. It's just when we start getting late afternoon of visits where I run into problems because I've got 2 or 3 meetings every night. And sometimes they start at 5:30, sometimes it's 6, but it just makes it difficult to be in 2 places at the same time. But I can make myself available for most of these dates, most.
Okay, so,
But that's that 4-day weekend, I gotta work that Friday in Clovis.
okay. I thought I was hearing that there might be 3 people available for that 9 o'clock slot.
No, the 10th though, or the 9th,
Oh, so.
that's
oh,
not a
the
problem.
9th.
We're talking the 24th.
Oh, the 24th. That's right. Okay,
Memorial
so
Day.
I'm gonna say it again on the 9th. I'm gonna the May 10th, restate based on Ariel's availability, hopefully. And Don, I'm hearing you're available.
Yeah.
So since we have 3, maybe we do go to Lake. So 5:10, 9 a.m., Lake Elementary. Without objection, we'll adopt it.
So we switched from Hercules to Lake.
Yes. It's adopted. Thank you.
One down.
Okay, so. Oh, yeah, we going back to where we were. This may seem a little bit repetitive, and if so, we don't need to dwell on item H, which is additional discussion on financial and bond performance. If there's any questions or comments at this point, after our presenters have left, anything anybody wants to share as a discussion between members on the committee?
Do we still have time to provide our questions and the feedback to these 2 reports after this meeting before the final?
We can create that opportunity. It would just be helpful to set kind of like a deadline because we need to let the auditors know when to make it final. And so would it be reasonable to say like another week or?
Yeah. Hold on.
Seems reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So
that'd be
I
great.
would say, yeah, so if you want to send, any questions or comments that you have, my recommendation is that they be emailed to the chair. And if you copy CBOC's liaison, which would be Lewis, then we'll make sure that we gather the questions, get the answers and provide the response. Just like a records request would be. So we follow that same process to make sure we don't lose anything.
Okay, thank you. Don?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we were supposed to conclude the meeting 9 minutes ago. I would make a motion that we, at 8:15.
Yeah.
So I'd make a motion that we address item L and defer everything else for the next meeting. L was the issue on the
yeah.
main meeting that Gia wanted. Can't defer that one to the next meeting.
So, if there's no objection, we'll move to item L. Okay. Move the regular CBOC May meeting date from May 13th to May 19th. So that would be the 3rd
We got a problem. The 19th is a Sunday.
Oh, shoot, okay, so there's a mistake.
Yeah, I don't do anything on my Sundays anyway, but maybe staff does. How about if we do it the next day on the 20th,
That
which
sounds
would be a
good.
Monday?
Um,
If staff is okay, I would
So-
make a motion that we defer the, or we,
is there a motion? Sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
trying to make it.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we change our May CBOC meeting to the third Monday of May, which would be May 20th. This would work for you,
Yes,
Gio?
is there a second to that? Oh, right, we don't need a second.
We don't.
Any discussion there? Any check, did everybody have time to check their calendars? Okay, if there are no objections, we'll adopt that. May 20th. The third Monday in May.
Oh,
Okay, yeah, all other items are deferred to the, or postponed, to next meeting or beyond. And so we'll, adjourn at 8:26. Thank you.
And just as a shame